in Mexico, I accidentally entered a community that was very alternative spiritual thinking, and that's where I had my big awakening. I had a near-death experience. I had the out-of-body experience. I left. I returned, and then all of this spiritual nonsense, all of a sudden, that I learned to, with sarcasm, to deny and to be skeptic about, all my skepticism was turned into dust. Like all my raised skepticism towards these things had no power over these experiences. Like I could not deny them anymore. Since then, lived in over 17 communities in 12 different countries.
Wow.
Like Costa Rica and also Czech Republic and Peru and mostly Latin America. And 7 of these years was only in Colombia, where I bought land. And I started like a alternative permaculture community. We bought like 20 hectares.
Welcome to this new episode, and today I am here with Lucas. How are you?
Amazing, beautiful day today in Koh Phangan.
Very nice. Lucas is called almost like me, plus an S, but he's a Tantra teacher, someone who had a very interesting life, and someone who is passionate about different subjects. So first of all, I'd like to ask you, what is your story in life?
Okay, my story, like I was born in Poland where it was still very poor and destroyed from after the war, the Cold War. So my parents were fleeing illegally from Poland. We were an immigrant family because they wanted better conditions for their children. And so we arrived in Germany, but basically my parents had to work themselves up quite hard. So they did it quite successfully to provide us a good life. But at the same time, like we children were like not really had much time with our parents because, you know, they had to work a lot. And so being an immigrant child in like a capital city, big city, was a quite tough challenge, especially with the combination of my physicality of my body. I was always the very skinny kid, so skinny that, you know, in immigrant schools, I was bullied a lot. And that was very like a tough time, like I would say torture in that way. But then at this time, like I would say, if anybody who was one of these children watching this right now, of these children back then, if you could reach out to me, I would love to shower you with my gratitude and love, because I feel like all this suffering and pain made me what I'm today, that I'm sitting on this couch. I am able to travel the world doing what I love to do, my passion. And I feel that transformation happened also partly because I wanted to break away from that suffering. So this whole narrative, or what doesn't kill you make you stronger, had a totally new meaning for me at that point. Because like I really tried to understand this like breaking free. And I feel like if you want to help others, you really need to go through. Sometimes people ask me like, hey, I would love to become a facilitator myself, but I'm a bit traumatized. Do you feel like that is a problem? And I say, well, I think the overcoming of suffering is a requirement, because you cannot help others to go through it if you don't did it yourself. The only thing is, the important thing is that you achieve that without external coping mechanisms. So for example, without drugs, without distractions, without this, like really went to the root and went all the way down into shadows and up, and then you know the whole spectrum. And that is what I was actually wondering, wanted to also, what is your perspective on that? Because you interviewed so many of these practitioners. If there's an common pattern that these people always share, they all suffered one way or another, but have overcome it, because that's the pattern I witnessed through my colleagues, that they shared that.
For sure, what you say resonates with me 100%. I totally agree with you. I think that personal development means overcoming challenges, and every human being is facing challenges of different nature depending on predispositions, environment. Some people face bigger challenges than others, but being a human being involves overcoming challenges. And a lot of people, I say, almost everybody that was interviewed here had some sort of challenge to overcome that sort of made them the person they are now. And you know, in Jungian psychology, it's called individuation, you know, integration of your shadow. I really like that a lot more than focusing on the trauma, because the trauma story makes you a victim sometimes. And sometimes, of course, obviously, for a period of time, if you get, you know, trauma can be looked at for sure, but then you have to move on. So, and also what I did myself, moving on from healing onto personal development, you know. All these other practices that I do, etc. at the beginning were a healing path, and then I don't want to see myself as sick, because I am not, you know. I'm a thriving, healthy individual who's reaching higher on a path of personal development. So
yeah, exactly. Like this basically suffering cracks you open, that this more divine light can come out, or this beautiful potential of you, you know. So I would say, like, if I would not went through this, you know, maybe I would now have a normal job and just pay rent. But now I do the whole year what I love to do, and I'm doing this since 10 years. So no regrets, you know, no looking back.
Sure, that's awesome. So you said immigrant in Germany, your parents working very hard to support the family, but then not so much time for yourself. Went through this journey of overcoming bullying, being the skinny kid.
Yeah.
And then?
And then, so I discovered, before I was into spirituality, that I have a certain superpower, which is my mind. Like, I love complexity. Even as a child, I didn't like so much the children books of the duck and the dog. I like the ones that showed something like complex, like where the pipelines go in the ship and how the engine works, the children version of it. But still, I love this, you know. And when I was 14, I got my first computer, and I had no manual. Everything was in English. I didn't speak English, and everything was not so easy like today, the iPads. It was still like where you had the console and have to program yourself. So I love I get very attracted by complexity. And then later on in university, I learned that I have a certain talent to absorb this complexity and understand it and take it apart, and also teach it to others or funnel it in a more understanding way. And that's where I finished my university early. I was studying as well in Germany, but also in California. And then I opened my own software company. And it was quite successful. I made 6 figures a year, hired employees. We worked for big companies and make a very innovative software for operating cars and like from your phone and steering that. And so I made a lot of money, and I was on this career path. But after only 16 months, I already went out. And it was like, I remember the exact date. We had an appointment at a notary, and it was the 21st of December in 2012.
Okay.
And on the way to the notary, I asked my friend, because everybody was hyped about the end of the world because of the Mayan calendar, the 21st.
Okay.
And I didn't really believe in end of the world and stuff like that, so I asked my friend, what is this about, this bullshit about the Mayan calendar? And he said, you know, I believe it's just not that much. It's just the end of the cycle and the start of a new cycle. From that moment, I lost all my ambition to continue my career. And I realized what I'm missing is not more money, but more time. And I was wasting it. I was sitting with these people, like CEOs on a table, and they would talk about their life, their future, their wives, their marriages, their travels. And I was looking at them, are you my future? Because I don't want to become like you. So then I took the golden parachute, which means like I took all the funds I had left my company and I left. And I went to Mexico with the intention to look for more sustainable way of life. Not in the esoteric spiritual way, but more in a permaculture way. So I felt like the way we treat this planet cannot be repeated indefinitely, like maybe for another 100 years, 300 years, but eventually we're gonna drive the ecosystem to a non-supportive way. And so then I learned that, but in Mexico, I accidentally entered a community that was very alternative spiritual thinking, and that's where I had my big awakening. I had a near-death experience, I had the out-of-body experience, I left, I returned, and then all of this spiritual nonsense, all of a sudden that I learned to, with sarcasm, to deny and to be skeptic about, all my skepticism was turned into dust. Like all my raised skepticism towards these things had no power over these experiences. Like I could not deny them anymore. So that's when I started to travel, searching on new paths, and I met the Rainbow Tribe, where the first time I got introduced to Tantra, and then the first time I felt self-love, I felt a transformation, I felt powerful healing that was not introduced to some kind of therapy or pharmaceuticals or whatever. And then I said, this is what I want to do. And I did, and I since then lived in over 17 communities in 12 different countries.
Wow.
Like Costa Rica and also Czech Republic and Peru and mostly Latin America. And 7 of these years was only in Colombia, where I bought land. And I started like a alternative permaculture community. We bought like 20 hectares. And we had people coming in, and there was we didn't believe that I bought the land, or I bought with several people, but land does not belong to us, but we belong to the land. So it's like, if you wanted to come to this community, you didn't need my permission. You would just arrive, set up your home there, because the land is owned by Pachamama. And we try to live without leaders. So the idea is everything is decided by consensus and talking circles. So it's a very beautiful, decentralized way of living, which I romanticized a lot the native tribes, because we went a lot to them, asked them for their advice. You made it like this for thousands of years. Teach us what we have forgotten, you know? So we not just drink with them ayahuasca, but also we were like with them in talking circles and teach us your ways, you know? But after 7 years of doing that, I realized that we cannot just go back to something that is 1,000 years ago, because life on this planet has changed. We need to address challenges that these native tribes didn't have to. You know, like overstimulation, or there's a lot of confusion. And so for me, then I questioned, what do we need? Because I think the biggest issue of humanity is ego. It's not pollution or something like this. That's just consequences of that. Pollution and war, you know? So how to overcome that? And for me, I was always going between spiritual practices like meditation, yoga, and also ayahuasca, you know, because it kicked my ego out of my head just like that. But then I realized I need a more sustainable way, because I cannot drink ayahuasca every night for the rest of my life.
No.
So I thought like it's a good start to somebody who comes from the city, but then you need something more sustainable that you can practice every day. And then I remember Tantra. So I came back to that, and I lived in my community, and I said, hey, I know a couple of these exercises that I learned at the Rainbow. So I shared with them, and they really liked it. They said, more, please more. And I said, I don't know anymore. And so I came back to my teacher, and I asked him to become his apprentice.
Okay.
So, and then I had a really beautiful teacher training, because instead of going to school, I was traveling with him around the world.
Wow.
And we were hosting these 1 month long retreats, and I was like an assistant. So I was helping, setting up, preparing the people, answering questions, and then more and more I get more responsibilities, more leading. And at some point I was leading whole like multiple day workshops, and my teacher said, you're ready to teach on your own and to go fly. And then I've taught since then in many places. Just before here I was teaching out 3 months in Germany, and before that in Israel, which was a very amazing experience to teach there, because there it's also was a lot of intensity, and I didn't manage yet, but I was even going all the way to Palestine, to Bethlehem, to find facilitators who would help me to facilitate a very soft Tantra workshop between Palestinian people and Israeli people.
Okay.
Something like eye gazing, or something like just holding the hand towards each other and realizing that that is not a Palestinian person or an Israeli, it's a human being. Because when you do eye gazing for like 15, 20 minutes, so many things change in your perception, and you realize that these borders are made up, and to melt a little bit this hate away into like, maybe there's more behind. And so I wish to go back there as soon, like right now, the tension goes a little bit down, and I already received a lot of offers to teach in other places, because I was teaching in Turkey, in Bulgaria, in Sweden, and I love to teach in places that the language I don't speak, because then I look for somebody who I can train to become a facilitator, so they can continue to teach and bring it to places I cannot go, because I don't speak that language, or I am to places where the people would not be able to afford very expensive Tantra workshops, because I feel like Tantra is accessible mostly for people who have money, but I feel like we need it also mostly in places where people do not have money and therefore suffering this tension of poverty, and maybe they wouldn't really appreciate these tools where this emptiness of lack of abundance, that would fill with a little bit more consciousness, self-reflection, and maybe realize that they are more abundant than they maybe perceive they are.
There are so many things you said, very interesting points you made. Certainly, I can share that I had a similar experience with the out-of-body, mystical experience that you had as well. And I have a kind of a similar kind of story of transformation as well, from like a more of a conventional sort of, corporate background, and then into alternative lifestyle. But you went a lot deeper, a lot further than me. And you said, when you say that you lived in so many communities, wow, I think about it. That would be a cool lifestyle. I like to do that, to explore different ways of living, different ways of sharing the land, as you said. And then also when you say about the Tantra, for sure, I really, I had different style mystical experiences, which means you feel in an altered state of consciousness, in a more whole, connected, even blissful sort of, emotion. And, transfiguration, which is looking into another person's eyes and seeing the god or the goddess inside them. It's a wonderful way of having a mystical experience, in my opinion. So many points you mentioned really resonate. And, so now you are on this path where it seems you want to spread the word of Tantra across the world.
Yeah.
And, you are a fully fledged Tantra teacher with the experience with your teacher. And also doing things on your own, is that right?
Yes.
For quite a while. So can we delve a little bit more into Tantra? So Tantra is an ancient methodology that allows people to come together, or how would you define Tantra?
That is a good question. I love this question, because like if you would go around Koh Phangan right now and ask maybe 10 people what is Tantra, you will probably get more than 10 answers, because some people will have more than one. And probably I belong to one of them that would give you more than one. And so a lot of people are sometimes criticizing that whatever is being shared on this island is not true Tantra. And for example, one of them is Christopher D. Wallace, who wrote the most acknowledged book on Tantra, Tantra Illuminated. And I really appreciate his work, because he really went deep into the research. And he has a point, because that what we do is not Tantra. It's like, because most of the exercises and practices we share on this island, you will not find an ancient scroll or sutra written in old Sanskrit that would describe the practices we share here. So in that way, he's right, that is not Tantra. But somebody could also come in this room and say, what we speak right now is not English. And it would be true.
Because we got an accent.
Not just because of the accent, but imagine if through this door Shakespeare would come in. He would probably say whatever we speak is not English, because if you ever read one of his books, that does not sound at all what we're speaking. So it's not just the accent, it's the words, it's the phrasing, And Shakespeare lived 400 years ago, and language goes through evolution. So imagine a practice that's 6,000 years old. So in that way, I feel like it needs to adapt. So when you look at the word tantra, like Sanskrit is an old language, but it's still spoken today. So we can translate to just the word on its own, and it means to weave or to loom. And if you look at the etymological description of that word, you separate it in tan and tra. Tan stands for the expansion or expanding, and tra is like a suffix. So for an instrument. So for example, you have glass opener or can opener. So opener is a suffix, and so the suffix means like an instrument or opener. So would be something like tan, expansion, tra, the instrument for the expansion.
Very good.
And then I would say, if you look around the island and look at all these facilitators here, Tantra from the heart, Tantra movement, Samakaruna, I would very much do say that whatever they share are instruments for expansion. And I would say what they do, they adapt to the people we are now. Because as I mentioned before, we have to overcome challenges that didn't exist 6,000 years ago. We have overstimulation, and therefore the resulting lack of sensitivity and confusion. Mm-hmm. So we need to pick up people where they are. And I really much also agree in preserving tradition, but that does not mean we should neglect new challenges that we have to face today with a bigger population, with technology, with all of that. So it should be a mix. And therefore I would say Tantra is like an instrument to put one of my friends says, put the subconscious into the conscious, and therefore experience liberation. And with this new space, you experience expansion. And then all of these words are a little bit like, very non-saying, very beautiful, pretty words. So what does it mean in practical? It is basically to, through different practices, trigger yourself that things come up. And that could be, for example, as I mentioned, to an eye gazing. We don't eye gaze anymore. People don't hold eye contact in the bus with strangers, and so therefore we lost this in our lives. And then when we do it for a prolonged time, all of a sudden we see, wow, there is something there. There's some kind of magic. Maybe they see even some face morphs or some psychedelic effects sometimes, and they didn't even took any drugs. Or they will release some emotions. Oh, I realized something about my childhood, or about my last partner, or about how I experience love. And all of these realizations are awakenings. It's something about that you figure something out that will improve the quality of your life, and sure. That is, I think, what Tantra does right now achieve on this island.
It's lovely the way you sort of have also a psychological parallel, with individuation and integration, because yes. Bringing the subconscious into the conscious,
yes.
Isn't that like a journey in life that everybody goes through, consciously or unconsciously, trying to understand more about themselves, about others, trying to connect with the different aspects of their psyche that is maybe more mysterious, and also trying to build functioning, relationships with others, more harmonious relationships, more flowy relationships.
Yeah, exactly. It's how we cope with that. So usually we have challenges, and we can either face them with awareness, with attention, which is sometimes not very comfortable, because it's not instant gratification. It will take maybe tears and stuff. And then for other people, it goes quicker if they just watch a movie, go to a party, because they distract from the pain, they go away from it. And for me, in general, sometimes it's just also painful, but it's kind of like going to the dentist, What is more painful? It's more painful to pull the teeth than to let it in rot, but eventually it will be more painful later on. So at some point, face it, go into that, or do your practices. If you do yoga every day and start from the beginning, you will not feel maybe so, you would rather maybe stay on the couch or stay lazy, but you will see the effects later on. And this is like the overcoming of this initial period that is the magic. And this is what I feel like this island helps people a lot, because we pull each other up. We're supporting each other. It's like, instead of eating fast food or going to distraction, there's not so much on this island like cinemas. There's more aesthetic dances and being on the beach, and people everywhere have these really deep conversations about life. And this is what I love about this place.
I totally agree, absolutely. And okay, so with regards to Tantra, or the interpretation, the modern actual interpretation of this ancient sort of methodology, I know there are some ritualistic aspects, there is some mystical aspects we talked about, there is some theory as well. I think maybe what are the main tools that you use with people?
I would not say that I have the main tools, because I, over the years, accumulated so many, like such a wide range, where I would say some of them would not be even considered Tantra, but more something I would call pre-Tantra, something like preparation. Let's say you're doing these practices of, let's say, we call it sublimation, or bringing the energy up, the life force, but you do exactly as the teacher said, nothing happens. So it's like either you don't believe that works, or maybe you are just too stupid to do so, but actually we can have certain blockages that they didn't have to face a long time ago. So my work also expands to working with the nervous system, calming it down with the vagus nerve, with your psyche, to remove certain blockages that maybe were put in place. And a lot of people talk very bad about fear and stress, but I feel like they have an unfair bad reputation. I want to improve the reputation of pain and stress, because all of these are invented by nature to help you adjust your behavior in a more healthy way. It's like more indicators. They're just like maybe not comfortable, but they're still good for you. And so it's like about listening to the pain instead of numbing it. Because like imagine you drive a car and you have a warning light, and it's like, oh, check engine light, and you turn out the lamp, no more problem, yeah? Because it's not a warning light. No, that's the aspirin, It's like you numbing the alarm rather than going what it's telling you. So when it's about these rituals, I feel like I love to talk about them, and also within the scope it's kind of like hard, because either I talk 5 hours or...
Which we could do at some point. I'm really enjoying our conversation.
Yeah. I love to speak about this, as I have a big passion, but then I can go also really deep in my methodology of how to help people, and that so far has confirmed me to go deeper on this path a lot, because the reflection, the feedback that I get from people has been so encouraging that in the beginning I had a lot of self-doubt, like who am I, this skinny little guy, like who is he's telling me what to do, how to live, how to practice, I was like, people will just be like, shut up. But then people just like authentically came back to me asking me for more, or for my contact, and for if they can come to their country, they would host me, and I was like, wow, this kind of support. So this self-doubt melted away over time.
More about Tantra possibly in a follow-up interview in a few months' time, but I would like to touch upon a couple of more subjects that I know you're very sort of interested in. Is that true? You are into cryptocurrencies? Or?
As well, yes, but for other reasons as most people think, because when people hear that, they think a lot about another way of getting instant gains, or getting rich quick, or scams, or stuff like that. And what I learned also in community, the concept of decentralization is very beautiful, because as I said, human ego is the biggest issue. So no matter what way we do, is always the seduction of abusing of power. And so how can we get rid of that? I think crypto is not the end solution, it's just a good solution for now, because no matter, like even if we become the presidents of Koh Phangan, and we would say, oh, we're good people, but then this power can seduce you. So maybe we should not give it to anyone, and try to distribute, because a lot of people will maybe believe, hey, I'm on Koh Phangan, I have this organic store where I'm selling chocolate, and I give 10% of my income to poor children or dogs on the street. And I say to them, yeah, so you're basically supporting war, or like they would not see how they're still doing something bad, because when the taxes and the system and the inflation still creates a constant redistribution of the power or of the money towards the wealthy away from the poor, it will just repeat. Whatever effort it is, they will just suck it out again, you know, like, and that's for, we need a way that is just not so possible anymore. And I feel like crypto is still in its very young age. I think it's at the beginning. I think like people hype it or misunderstand it a lot. But I think give it 10 more years, then more people understand. I mean, 30 years ago, nobody understood how to use email or something. Like my mom could not send me one. Now she's using WhatsApp every day. So it's like an adoption process.
Sure. Well, you're touching upon a very complex subject, which is one of the major pillars of philosophical speculation, which is the subject of ethics, you know, and morality in general. And
yes.
I mean, we could do a whole other like 2 hours conversation about it, because it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I've been delving into sort of, you know, learning about ethics and morality, particularly in the face of this hyped morality that seems to be in the media all the time, and this sort of, on one side I see lots of corruption and dysfunction, and on the other side I see people, you know, doing all sort of exercises of looking good and parroting the news of the newspapers, and like sort of buying into this like a, you know, centralized, you know, mediatic form of morality. But of course, you know, it is a very important subject, and I like the fact that you know, you look at Bitcoin or the cryptocurrency from an aspect of decentralization. We'll see what happens with this technology, because indeed the technologies tend to be harvested or controlled by a smaller group of people. Like I see the internet, for instance, were very democratic to start with, and now, you know, gradually more and more, you know, the internet and the sort of the voices on the internet are being shut down, and is being controlled a lot more. So there is lots of promise with this new technology, and I hope it does manifest in a good, whatever good means, way, you know, but
fair way, or good for humanity, not for individuals,
yes.
You know, for us as a collective, because I feel like when we raise the quality of life for more distributed way, or more for everyone, it also becomes better for each individual as well, even for the rich people, because I feel like what makes me most happy is if there is people around me that is happy, because it kind of like bounces back on me.
Sure.
And so I like to be in Koh Phangan because there's more happy people, and it's like if we can create this narrative in more places, because we're not sucking the life out of it. And I feel like that is right now the best idea we have. And as you said, sometimes we fight this, like internet is being censored, but to some point we learn how it's censored and becoming more and more censor resistant. And even the internet right now cannot be fully censored anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's with crypto. But the idea is like we need to, one of the most important things that I try to bring out about crypto is we need really the education and the core philosophy, and get away from, okay, I have 10,000, how much can I make with that? Forget about that. It's like, it's more about, I have this kind of life, and I want to maintain that, and I not want to be sucked dry. So it's more about this concept.
And as you said, you know, I also believe that if you want to do something which is nice and ethical, of course you can support global ideologies. I'm not saying you shouldn't. You can do a lot with your neighbor, with a family member maybe you don't have a great relationship with. You can do a lot with, you know, the guy that you go and have a coffee with, and, you know, the waiter that brings you the coffee. I mean, I think you can really do a lot in terms of helping others in the day-to-day life. You know, I think that big transformation starts from the individual before you can impact major systems of society.
Exactly, yeah. It takes out a little bit more the ego, and it's also like helps us to create a way how, because money is a means of communication of value, you know, so how can we communicate that without being like that somebody's taking advantage of it. That's all, you know?
Yeah.
And same thing with permaculture, because I think there's a lot of similarities between crypto and permaculture, because you know, it's about the ecosystem and how it creates a more sustainable way of healing, of self-regulation, rather than having one person on the top trying to control everything.
Yes, and of course you have experience with permaculture in Colombia, you said.
I love.
So do you still have, or you still kind of part of this community that has the land there?
Yeah, I
or?
still own the land. Right now my focus has shifted towards teaching Tantra and spread it out, but it's not necessarily my decision. I live my life according to the signs that I'm getting, where I'm being pulled at. So if I'm getting invitation to go there or there, I follow the signs. And since I adapted this kind of lifestyle, things go very, very well for me. So instead of trying to decide what I do, I let the universe decide.
I try to do that as well more and more. I had a bit of a switch about 3 or 4 years ago. When I started, you know, I always thought that I was going towards life, whilst now I have this feeling and sensation that life is coming towards me. You know, it's like I am not the director or the producer of my own movie. I am the main actor in it. But I don't have a script. The script is given to me, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
It sounds like you're losing control a little, but then if you surrender into this idea, everything becomes a lot more organic and natural, because the experience you're going through, it's not designed by you. I mean, the way you interpret it in the moment is the true free will, but everything else, you know, it's like you didn't choose your parents, early life experience, not consciously at least, you know, and most of what's happening around, all you can have is just the presence of mind of, you know, having a response to the environment, which maybe makes you feel connected, you know, bring some positive emotions.
Yeah, I always just said I tried both ways, the manifestation way and the looking for the signals way. And after 12 years of comparing those two, I have the strong evidence for myself that I get way more gifts unexpectedly if I do it that way. For example, I walk just down the street and I say something like tells me that way, I go that way, all of a sudden I get invited to a dinner, or I met a beautiful person, or, you know, that happens to me since then almost on the, like, every day or every second day. And so since then I feel so convinced about this, and my life is a blessing. Like, I feel like now, I could die tomorrow or already be like, I accomplished everything in that way that I feel like I would not die in sorrow.
Very nice.
Like if I would have an accident or something.
Yeah, you had a full life, right? Me too, in some ways. And you know, I like the fact that you know talk about the principle of resonance, which is also a tantric principle I learned in another school. Or people might call it the law of attraction. It is so true, you know, if you're heart-centered, you're high vibration. I do meditation every morning, I do beach walks, I do physical activity, I do yoga, just because it kind of makes me feel, you know, my soul is taken care of, not just the physical aspect. And when you're feeling good, generally, you're grounded and elated, so you have a higher energy, then you tend to attract good things, right? Whilst if you're on the very low of the lows, all sorts of stuff comes to you that maybe you don't want to have.
I agree.
Yes.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, for me it's like exactly like the resonance of coming back and not trying to swim against the river, you know, because the river eventually you will exhaust yourself. Because like the thing in Colombia, what I did, I was trying to manifest this community, and like I was like, don't give up, push through, you know, because there was a lot of challenging times, and like, you can manifest this, you know, just hold on one more year. And then it was like, when I finally like gave up to manifest exactly what I wanted, and I was broken down, burned out, gave up and sad, then all of a sudden the gifts came to me. When I finally lost of attachment, and then it's like, here's something beautiful for you, and here, and here. I was like, why didn't it come like a week early or a year early? Why now? It's like, okay, what did change? I surrendered. And then I was like, okay, maybe that is some kind of sign. And then I was like, okay, let's try this again, just to be sure. I was like, okay, I go this way, it does not work. I go this way, it works again. Back and forth, okay, I think I see a pattern here. Yeah.
And now my favorite subject, Koh Phangan, the island I love. I mean, why do you love Koh Phangan?
I have been to many different places, like there are Koh Phangan similar, like for example, Mazunte in Mexico, San Cristobal, Lake Atitlan, Pisac, and there have been places like this all over the world. You have Goa in India. So I feel like first of all, we are all over the world, like in every big city, in every village, but we are so spread far apart. And then even though we are millions, we are still lonely because you know, they live in the next village or far away. So then we start to create these little concentration, these hubs all over the world. And I basically just jump from one to another of them, you know, because I feel like I want to be with like-minded people on the same vibration. I don't like to talk about football and drinking beer. Like, that's just not resonates with me. I don't feel that gives me something. So when I come to a place like Koh Phangan, I just sit, let's say, in the cake place, which is one of my favorite places here. And you know, you just sit down and you have all the time a person coming in that you have either a connection with, or you're just sitting there and the next to you people have a really deep conversation about something, and it's just like heart opening. That's what we have on a daily chit chat, you know. It's like deep things about life, about progress, about emotion. Even men, you know, hear men cry, they release the emotion, they're not too cool for that or too masculine that they cannot do that. And this is for me so beautiful. Men sing and they dress colorful, they're more expressive. And also women, I feel like they feel a little bit more understood, even though it's still challenging. They still feel better here than, let's say, in a big capital where they go in a bar and they would just be grabbing us. Where here, at least in Shritanu, like for me, Koh Phangan, because you said Koh Phangan, I more like Shritanu. I don't leave this like bubble. This bubble. I don't go to Hadrin or like this, you know, especially like Jerusalem and something like this I like as well. But for me, this is like our this heart beating. And you know, this island is like a big quartz crystal and has, I think, some kind of frequency, because why this island? You know, I feel like it's not a coincidence that we choose this place. It has some kind of attraction. And I just would love to that we can also maintain it. So I really like also your work, because it's how to say like a library of that we never forget what this is about, because it becomes a little bit gentrified now, but this is like important memories to look back at where we came from, and that will never be lost. And then maybe at some point where we lose it a little bit, we're gonna see one of Lucas' videos like from 10 years ago. I was like, wow, we should maybe like remember our roots, you know, and come back to this.
Thank you. It's for me, I see it as a postcard, you know. So in yourself, this interview, you'll watch in 10 years' time. You're gonna be you 10 years ago in a specific moment, in a specific historical period in Koh Phangan. And it's a memory of sort, you know. So it's got this kind of like sentimental value, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
As well as you said, you know, having a chance of talking about more esoteric or more interesting subjects around spirituality, holistic health, art. You know, there's many artists here as well. I totally resonate with what you say, and I also hope that you know, our community of alternatives grows as the tourists grow. And remember, we are not separated, because you might come to Koh Phangan on a holiday for 2 weeks and then they try out some yoga class or a breathwork session. Just off chance, you might go to Lucas, you know, like a class on Tantra, and something might start from, you know, a place that you had no clue. You just wanted a beach holiday, but then, so all these people, all the tourists that come, you know, they are all souls on a journey themselves. And even if they're more commercial, more mainstream, some of them will be maybe open to try something new, you know? Yeah. And that's what we can offer them anyway, you know? So that's a wonderful thing.
I feel like the biggest financial damage that this island has caused is the loss in flight tickets. Because people come and they'll be like, oh, well, 2 weeks here, and then I go back, and I was like, I cannot leave, but I booked my ticket, and so I will lose the famous nickname Sticky Island, you know?
Sure.
You know, I was picked up here by my friend, and he like drove me from the Tongsala Pier, and he said, like, careful, you might get stuck here. And here I am, still 7 months later, you know, because I never planned to be here so long.
Cool. Well, Lucas, thank you very much for coming to Chalaklam and sharing your interesting story and, you know, a life mission with me. Kapunka.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.